The words hit him like a physical blow, each syllable dripping with a contempt that had nothing to do with his record and everything to do with the color of his skin. "You'll be on latrine duty," Captain James Hargrove said, his flat voice cutting through the air like a knife. The mission briefing continued around him, the other soldiers chiming in with their eager anticipation of the action to come, their laughter echoing, while Eli Carter stood to the side, invisible. 19 years old, Eli was a cook's assistant in a military base in Hawaii, the sun blazing overhead, casting long shadows across the sandy ground. He had dreams, big dreams, of becoming a chef, of creating culinary masterpieces that would tantalize taste buds and warm hearts. But here he was, relegated to scrubbing toilets while his peers trained for glory. In his mind, he could already picture the elegant soufflés he wanted to whip up, the fragrant spices he longed to experiment with. Instead, he inhaled the acrid scent of bleach and the faint smell of sweat from the soldiers rushing around him. "Did you hear me, Carter?" Hargrove snapped, his eyes narrowing, the unyielding gaze of a man who saw nothing of value in the young black man before him. Eli swallowed hard, the lump in his throat growing as he nodded. "Yes, sir." The words felt heavy like lead, resonating with the injustice he faced daily. Around him, the base buzzed with activity. Soldiers trained relentlessly, their determination palpable, but Eli felt the weight of their dismissive glances. He was the youngest, the poorest, the one who spoke with an accent that marked him as an outsider. And he was black, which in the eyes of many in that camp was the greatest disadvantage of all. Private Leo Martinez, a Hispanic soldier and Eli's closest friend, stood nearby, his brow furrowed in concern. Leo had always believed in Eli's potential, often encouraging him to speak up, to fight against the tide of doubt that threatened to drown him. "Don't let him get to you, Eli," Leo said quietly, stepping closer, his voice low and conspiratorial. "You know you can do more than this. You're better than this." Eli clenched his fists, the rough fabric of his uniform scratching against his skin. "What's the point, Leo? No one believes I can handle anything but this." He gestured around the kitchen, the clattering pots and pans a stark contrast to the dreams simmering in his heart. "You'll show them," Leo insisted, his eyes sparkling with defiance. "Just keep pushing. You've got what it takes." But as the captain continued to brief the other soldiers on the mission, Eli's heart sank deeper. The tension in the air was palpable, a prelude to something monumental. He felt trapped in a world that only saw him as a cook, a mere assistant to those with more privilege. The injustice of it all festered within him, igniting a fire that he didn't know how to control. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, the static cutting through the chatter. "All units prepare for potential engagement. Intelligence reports suggest increased enemy activity in the area. Stand by for further instructions." The tension escalated, soldiers straightening, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Eli's heart raced. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The chance to prove himself, to fight for something greater than himself. But instead, he was left scrubbing toilets, while the men he trained beside prepared for action. The unfairness of it all felt like a weight on his chest, suffocating him. "Carter," Hargrove barked, snapping Eli from his reverie, "I need you to clean those latrines up to standard. I want them spotless before we head out." Eli's jaw clenched, the bitterness rising in him like bile. He fought back the surge of anger, biting his tongue to keep from snapping at the captain. Instead, he nodded again, a tight smile forced onto his face. "Yes, sir." As he turned away, he could feel the weight of their laughter, their camaraderie, enveloping him like a heavy fog. He felt like a ghost, wandering through a world that refused to acknowledge his existence. And yet deep within him simmered a quiet resolve. He would not be forgotten. He would prove them wrong. Before we continue, let us know in the comments what you would do if you were in Eli's shoes. Your thoughts matter, and we're all in this together. Now back to Eli's journey. So Eli trudged towards the latrines, the warm Hawaiian sun beating down on him, sweat trickling down his back. Each step felt heavier than the last, the injustice of his situation gnawing at him. He could hear the muffled laughter of the other soldiers, the camaraderie that felt so distant from his own reality. It was hard to shake the feeling of being an outsider, of being dismissed without a second thought. As he scrubbed the grimy toilets, he couldn't help but replay the briefing in his mind. The soldiers had been discussing the upcoming operations, their voices filled with excitement and bravado. Eli had longed to be part of that conversation, to share in the anticipation of what was to come. Instead, he was relegated to this, an endless cycle of menial tasks that chipped away at his spirit. But there was a flicker of hope in the midst of the despair. He had seen the way the sergeants had looked at him during training, some with skepticism, others with indifference. But there were moments when he caught a glimpse of something different. Curiosity, perhaps. He yearned to show them his worth, to rise above the expectations that had been set for him. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an orange glow over the base as Eli finished his task. He wiped his brow, taking a moment to breathe, allowing the salty breeze from the nearby ocean to wash over him. He could hear the distant crashing of waves, a reminder of the beauty that surrounded them, even in a place so steeped in conflict. Then, as he stood there, lost in thought, he felt the familiar weight of the scar on his palm, a jagged reminder of a life before the uniform. He had never spoken of it, a secret that he held close, the memory of pain and survival etched into his skin. It was a story that shaped who he was, one that he would one day share when the time was right. But for now, he had to focus on the present. The urgency of the moment loomed larger than ever, and the ticking clock of impending conflict echoed in his mind. He took a deep breath, feeling the ground beneath him anchor him to reality. What awaited him was uncertain, but he was determined to seize any opportunity that came his way. Eli Carter was more than just a cook's assistant. He was a man on the brink of discovering his own strength, and he would not let the world define him. As he made his way back to the kitchen, the sounds of laughter and chatter filled the air, but it felt different now, charged with anticipation, with the promise of what was to come. Eli's heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement, a feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. He was ready to fight, ready to prove himself, and whatever lay ahead, he would face it head on. And that flame within him began to burn brighter than ever before. The kitchen was a realm of steady chaos, filled with the sizzling of bacon and the clatter of metal pots, a stark contrast to the tension simmering just outside its doors. Eli stood by the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal, the steam rising and coiling around him like a ghost. He could hear the laughter of other soldiers mingling with the sounds of clanking metal as they prepared for the day ahead. Yet the warmth of the kitchen felt distant, overshadowed by the cold dismissal he had just experienced. As he poured the oatmeal into bowls, the aroma of the thick, creamy mixture wafted through the air, a comfort he clung to amidst the turmoil of his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider, a mere cook's assistant in a world where valor was measured in gunfire and bravery. The bitterness of injustice lingered in his mouth, a reminder that, despite his skills, he had been relegated to the sidelines. "Hey, Eli," called out Private Leo Martinez, his closest ally in this unforgiving environment. Leo was a wiry Hispanic soldier, with a bright smile that cut through the shadows of the base. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his brow furrowed with concern. "You coming to the training exercise later?" Eli sighed, turning to face him. "What's the point? Hargrove's just going to stick me back in the kitchen." Leo stepped inside, the warmth of his presence a welcome distraction. "You've got to show him what you can do. You think those boys out there are better than you? You're faster, stronger, and you've got skills nobody knows about." Eli's brow furrowed. "Skills? Like what? Making the best biscuits in the army?" "Damn right, but you know you can shoot. You've outperformed everyone in practice. You just need to show them you're not just a cook's assistant," Leo urged, his voice rising with enthusiasm. "Tonight's exercise is a chance for you to prove it." "Yeah, sure, if I can even get a chance to participate," Eli muttered, stirring the oatmeal with a little more force than necessary. The wooden spoon scraped against the bottom of the pot, echoing the frustration building inside him. "Come on, man. You can't let them keep you down. You've got to fight for your place," Leo pressed, stepping closer. "And besides, you owe it to yourself to try." Eli glanced at Leo, his friend's determination igniting a flicker of hope in his chest. The pressure of expectation weighed heavily on him, But the thought of doing nothing stung even more. "What if I fail?" he whispered, more to himself than to Leo. "Then you get up and try again." "But what if you succeed?" Leo grinned, tilting his head slightly as if daring Eli to dismiss the possibility. "You'll be the hero, Eli, the one they never saw coming." The thought lingered in Eli's mind, a challenge that struck at the core of his insecurities. What if he could rise above the shadows cast by others? What if he could prove them wrong? His resolve solidified. Eli nodded slowly, determination tightening his jaw. "Okay, I'll be there. But I'm not just going to show them I can shoot. I'm going to show them what I'm really made of." As the afternoon wore on, the heat of the sun bore down on the training grounds, the air thick with the scent of sweat and determination. Eli stood at the edge of the field, watching the other soldiers practice their drills. The sharp crack of rifles firing echoed around him, each shot a reminder of the stakes that loomed just on the horizon. A mission was coming, and he could feel it in his bones, the urgency, the pressure mounting like an incoming tide. Yet, as he observed the camaraderie among the soldiers, a wave of self-doubt washed over him. He could see the disdain in the eyes of some who passed him by, their whispers barely concealed. "Just a cook," they would sneer, dismissing him as if he were nothing more than a kitchen utensil. But the ticking clock of that impending mission haunted him. He overheard snippets of conversations on the training field, talk of maneuvers, strategies, and the impending war. The knowledge that he might miss out on being part of something bigger, something that could change the course of history, gnawed at him. "Eli, you ready?" Leo's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to reality. They had gathered for the training exercise, and Eli felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Yeah, ready as I'll ever be," he replied, trying to infuse confidence into his tone. The exercise commenced, and Eli found himself in the ranks, his heart pounding in rhythm with the thud of boots against the ground. He was just another soldier now, one of many, but deep inside, he felt the need to prove himself rising to the surface. As the drill instructor barked orders, Eli kept his eyes focused, feeling the adrenaline coursing through him. He was determined to push aside the whispers and the doubts. He was more than just a cook, he was a soldier. Moments later, the sergeant called for volunteers to demonstrate the next round of live fire exercises. Eli's heart raced as a knot of fear and excitement twisted in his stomach. This was his chance, his moment to step out from the shadows. "Carter, get up here!" the sergeant bellowed, pointing directly at him. The laughter and jeers from the other soldiers echoed in his ears, but he pushed through the noise, stepping forward. As he took his place, Eli felt the weight of their gazes pressing down on him. The sight of the rifle felt foreign in his hands, yet familiar at the same time. His fingers itched to connect with that weapon, to show them what he could do. He took a deep breath, centering himself. The instructor explained the drill, but all Eli could hear was the pounding of his own heart, the ticking clock in the back of his mind, echoing louder with each passing second. Then, as he aimed at the targets ahead, he felt a familiar scar on his palm, an old reminder of a life that had shaped him, a life he rarely spoke about. It was a mark of resilience, of survival, and it stoked the fire within him. As he pulled the trigger, the shot rang out sharp and clear, slicing through the air. The bullet found its mark, striking the target with a satisfying thud. A rush of exhilaration surged through him, followed by disbelief. "Not bad, Carter," the sergeant called out, his voice begrudgingly impressed. Eli felt a flicker of pride, but it was quickly smothered by the realization that this was only the beginning. He needed to do more. He had to do more. The mission was coming, and with it, the chance to prove himself, not just to the others, but to himself. "Let's go again," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through him as he stepped up for another round. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, to fight for his place among the soldiers who had dismissed him. Before long, the exercise ended, and the soldiers began to disperse, but Eli remained behind, determined to practice just a bit longer. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows on the ground, a reminder that time was slipping away, that the clock was ticking down towards something he could not ignore. "Hey, Eli, you good?" Leo called as he walked past, his expression a mix of concern and encouragement. "Yeah, just trying to get it right," Eli replied, wiping the sweat from his brow. The weight of expectation pressed down on him, but he was fueled by the urgency of the mission ahead. "Don't overdo it, we need you out there," Leo said, clapping him on the shoulder before heading off to join the others. As Eli stood alone, a sense of determination washed over him. This was his moment to break free from the chains of others' expectations, to rise above the limitations imposed upon him. But deep down, the looming question remained: would he be enough when the time came? The sun set, casting a fiery glow over the training grounds, and Eli felt the weight of his past, the unspoken fears, and the dreams he held close to his heart. He had to keep pushing forward. "Let's do this," he whispered to himself, clenching his fists. If you felt the weight of injustice like Eli, and you want to see how his story unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey. Your support means everything, and we're just getting started. Eli's journey is just beginning, and his fight for recognition is only getting more intense. Stay with us as we dive deeper into his struggles, his triumphs, and the fight for his place in history. Eli stood in the chaotic kitchen, the smell of frying bacon mingling with the salty sea air wafting through the open windows. The morning of December 7th, 1941, started out like any other day, but an undercurrent of tension rippled through the base. Soldiers moved with an unusual urgency, their faces drawn tight with anticipation. Overhead, the sky was a brilliant blue, but Eli felt a heaviness in the air that made his heart race. For a moment, he thought about the mission he'd overheard last week, the one that had everyone talking. But now, all he could focus on was the clang of pots and the impatient shouts of the cooks around him. He wiped his hands on a dish rag, his fingers brushing over the jagged scar on his palm. It was a constant reminder of his past, a memory he preferred to keep buried. He had been careless once and the price had been steep, but today that scar felt like a badge of survival, something that made him feel alive amidst the mundane. He looked out the kitchen door, catching sight of Captain Hargrove barking orders at a group of soldiers. The captain's eyes swept over Eli without recognition, as if he were invisible yet again. "Carter, get those potatoes peeled," Hargrove snapped, his voice cutting through the clamor of the kitchen. Eli's spine stiffened at the command, but he forced himself to comply. He moved to a nearby table, grasping a potato peeler with a sense of purpose. As he worked, he stole glances at the soldiers gathering outside, their camaraderie palpable. They were gearing up for something big, and Eli felt the weight of his insignificance pressing down harder than ever. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. At first, he thought it was just an earthquake, a common occurrence in Hawaii, but the sound that followed shattered that notion. A deafening roar filled the air, the kind that made the very bones in his body vibrate. Eli dropped the peeler, his heart racing as he rushed to the door. Outside, chaos erupted. The sky darkened with smoke and the distant sound of explosions thundered in his ears. "Attack! We're under attack!" a soldier shouted, panic etched across his face. Eli's mind spun, grappling with the reality of the situation. He shoved through the kitchen door, the sunlight blinding him momentarily. As he stood in the open, the horror unfolded before him. Japanese fighter planes swooped low, their machine guns rattling, sending bullets raining down on the base. Soldiers scrambled for cover, confusion and terror etched across their faces. Eli's heart raced. He had never seen anything like this. Fear twisted in his gut like a knife. He was a cook, not a soldier. He had no training for this. But as he watched, something shifted within him. The injustice of his situation crashed over him like a wave. He had spent too long being dismissed, too long being told he was less than worthy. Now, as men around him fell to the ground, Eli felt a fire ignite in his chest. He was done being invisible. He turned and sprinted towards the sound of gunfire, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The machine gun nest was a few yards away, manned by two soldiers who were already pinned down. Eli's breath came in quick bursts as he reached the weapon. He could see the fear in their eyes, the desperation of men caught in a nightmare. "Get back!" one of them shouted, but Eli didn't hesitate. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling as they found the grips of the machine gun. He had never fired one before, but something primal urged him to act. He remembered the training exercises, the way the gun was supposed to feel in his hands. He steadied himself, heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos around him. The roar of the engine above drowned out everything else as he pulled the trigger. The gun jolted against his shoulder, and he felt the recoil reverberate through him. Bullets sprayed into the sky, and he aimed at the enemy planes, frustration and fear fueling his resolve. "Eli, what are you doing?" Leo's voice cut through the din. Eli glanced back to see his friend fighting through the chaos, eyes wide with disbelief. "Get down!" But Eli couldn't stop. He fired again and again, focusing on the planes swooping overhead, the anger at his own past fueling his every shot. He was no longer just a cook's assistant. He was a soldier, and he was determined to protect those around him. With every squeeze of the trigger, he felt the weight of the world shifting. Just as he began to feel the surge of power, an explosion erupted nearby, sending debris flying. Eli ducked instinctively, heart racing as he looked around for Leo. The machine gun rattled in his grasp, the deafening roar mingling with the cries of the wounded. He was in the thick of it now, and there was no turning back. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Captain Hargrove charging towards him, a look of shock on his face. "Carter, get out of there!" Hargrove shouted, but Eli was beyond listening. He was fighting for his life, for the respect he had been denied for too long. Suddenly, a bullet struck Hargrove in the shoulder, knocking him to the ground. Eli's heart sank, the sight of his commanding officer crumpling sending a jolt of fear through him. For a split second, he hesitated. Should he abandon the gun to help Hargrove? But something inside him surged. He realized that this was his moment, the moment he had been waiting for, and he couldn't let fear dictate his actions anymore. "Hold the line," he shouted to the soldiers around him, his voice hoarse but resolute. "We're not done yet." Eli turned back to the machine gun, adrenaline pumping through his veins as he unleashed another torrent of bullets into the sky. The planes continued to dive and swoop, but each shot he fired felt like a defiance against the prejudice he had faced. He was no longer just a cook's assistant. He was Eli Carter, a fighter, and he would not let this day define him. But just as victory seemed within grasp, an unexpected twist struck. A loud crash echoed as a plane went down, spiraling towards the ground. Eli watched in horror as it veered off course, heading straight for the mess hall where more soldiers were trapped inside, unaware of the impending doom. "Get back! Get everyone out!" Eli screamed, the urgency in his voice cutting through the chaos. He leaped from the machine gun, leaving it momentarily unmanned, racing towards the mess hall, but it was too late. The plane clipped the roof, sending debris crashing down as smoke and flames erupted. Eli felt his heart sink, despair clawing at him as he watched men scrambling for safety. But in that moment of chaos, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Hargrove was still on the ground, clutching his shoulder, struggling to rise. "Sir!" Eli shouted, desperation flooding his voice. He turned to the nearest soldiers. "Help him!" As they rushed to assist Hargrove, Eli's focus shifted back to the mess hall. He could hear the cries of trapped men beneath the rubble, their voices barely audible over the cacophony. Without thinking, he dove into the wreckage, adrenaline fueling his every movement. He clawed through debris, shouting for anyone who might still be alive. "Help! Is anyone in there?" His voice echoed through the smoky haze. Then he heard it, a faint groan. Eli's heart raced as he dug deeper, the heat of the flames licking at his skin. He pulled away a heavy beam, sweat pouring down his face as he finally uncovered a soldier pinned beneath. "I've got you. Just hold on." With a surge of strength, he lifted the beam, freeing the soldier. The man gasped, his eyes wide with fear. "Thank you," he croaked, and Eli nodded, urgency propelling him forward. Just as he was about to turn back, he felt a sharp pain in his side, the world spinning as he stumbled back. He glanced down in shock to see blood seeping through his uniform. A shard of glass had cut him in the chaos, but he refused to let it stop him. He had come too far to falter now. With one final push, he emerged from the wreckage, dragging the soldier with him just as another explosion erupted nearby. He collapsed onto the grass, panting, his heart racing as he looked around. Soldiers were regrouping, the machine gun still firing sporadically, and Hargrove was being helped by a medic, his expression a mix of pain and disbelief. "Carter!" Hargrove's voice rang out, filled with a new tone, one of respect that Eli had never heard before. "What did you just do?" Eli met Hargrove's gaze, breathing heavily as the adrenaline began to fade. "I fought," he replied, voice hoarse but steady. "I fought for us all." In that moment, amidst the wreckage of the mess hall and the cries of the wounded, Eli realized that he had finally claimed his place. The injustice he had faced had forged him into something stronger. He was no longer just a cook's assistant. He was a soldier, a protector, and he had proven that he was worthy of their respect. And as the smoke cleared and the reality of the attack settled in, Eli felt a sense of purpose wash over him. Today was just the beginning. He had not only fought for his fellow soldiers, but had also fought for himself. He had taken a stand against the prejudice that had defined him for too long, and now he could finally look forward to a future where he would no longer be invisible. As he lay on the ground, catching his breath, he knew this was a turning point. The world was forever changed, and so was he. The chaos of the attack on Pearl Harbor had left an indelible mark on the base. Smoke curled into the sky, mingling with the cries of the wounded and the distant rumble of gunfire. In the heart of this turmoil, Eli Carter emerged as a reluctant hero, his hands trembling yet steady on the machine gun that had become both his weapon and his salvation. After the battle, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Eli found himself in a makeshift triage center, the air thick with the stench of sweat and antiseptic. The men around him were a mix of the injured and the shaken, yet the atmosphere was charged with a sense of camaraderie and resilience that had not been there before. Captain Hargrove limped into the tent, a bandage wrapped around his arm, his expression a mixture of pain and newfound respect. He caught Eli's eye, and for a moment, the world outside faded. The chaos, the noise, the weight of history pressing down on them. "Carter," Hargrove began, his voice low but firm, "what you did today, it was brave. You saved lives." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with the weight of acknowledgement Eli had longed for, but had never received. Eli's heart raced as he processed the compliment, a mixture of pride and disbelief swelling within him. "I just did what anyone would have done, sir," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "No." Hargrove shook his head, the tension in his brow easing slightly. "You did what I didn't think you were capable of. You took charge when it mattered most." It was a small victory, but for Eli it was monumental. Years of being overlooked and underestimated began to melt away, replaced by a sense of purpose that ignited within him. He had fought not just for survival, but for the respect that had been so cruelly withheld. As night settled over the base, Eli found himself surrounded by his fellow soldiers, the atmosphere shifting from somber to celebratory. They shared stories of bravery and loss, laughter mingling with tears as they began to heal from the day's horrors. "Eli, you were incredible out there," Private Leo Martinez exclaimed, clapping him on the back. "I always knew you had it in you." The warmth of Leo's words wrapped around Eli like a protective cloak, shielding him from the lingering shadows of doubt. "Thanks, Leo," Eli replied, a smile breaking through the fatigue etched on his face. "I couldn't have done it without you pushing me to train. You believed in me when nobody else did." The night wore on, and as the stars began to twinkle in the vast Hawaiian sky, Eli felt something shift within him. The injustice of his past began to dissolve in the face of his triumph. He was no longer just a cook's assistant. He was a soldier, a protector, a man who had found his voice amidst the cacophony of war. Days turned into weeks, and the base began to recover from the attack. Eli was recognized not just for his bravery, but for his leadership potential. He was promoted to a role that allowed him to train others, helping to foster a new generation of soldiers who could also rise above their circumstances. Captain Hargrove, though still stern, became a mentor. He encouraged Eli to pursue his dreams of becoming a chef, suggesting culinary programs that the military offered. "You have the discipline, Eli," he urged. "Apply it to your cooking. You could be great." Eli took those words to heart. He began to envision a future where he could blend his love for cooking with the lessons learned in battle. He imagined a restaurant that celebrated diversity, where every dish told a story of resilience and hope, and every patron left with a sense of belonging. One afternoon, As Eli stood in the kitchen preparing a meal for the troops, he found himself humming softly to a tune from his childhood. The rhythm of chopping vegetables and stirring sauces felt like home, a stark contrast to the battles he had fought. As he plated the food, he caught a glimpse of the scar on his hand, a reminder of his past. It was no longer just a mark of pain, but a testament to his journey, a symbol of the strength he had discovered within himself. With every soldier he fed, he felt a connection, an unspoken bond forged through shared experiences and survival. He found joy in nurturing others, bringing them together over a meal just as he had always dreamed. Eventually, the day came when Eli received an invitation to share his story at a military gathering. As he stood before a crowd of soldiers, officers, and families, he felt the familiar flutter of nerves. But this time, it was different. This time, he was not afraid. He spoke of the attack, of fear and bravery, but also of dreams and the journey to find oneself. "Never let anyone tell you what you can or cannot do," he urged, his voice steady. "We are all capable of greatness, even when the odds are stacked against us." His words resonated, echoing in the hearts of those who had faced their own battles. They cheered, clapped, and some even shed tears, but Eli felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. As he stepped down from the podium, he was met with applause and admiration. The weight of prejudice that had once held him down was now lifted, replaced by the respect he had fought so hard to earn. He was a symbol of resilience, of breaking barriers, of proving that anyone could rise above their circumstances. In the weeks that followed, Eli embraced his dual identity, a soldier and a chef. He began to blend his culinary skills with his military training, creating meals that not only fed the body, but nourished the spirit. As he stood in the kitchen one evening, preparing for a big event, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. The aroma of spices filled the air, and laughter echoed from the dining area. Eli realized he had found his place, not just in the military, but in life. And as the last of the guests left, he reflected on how far he had come, from being dismissed and overlooked to becoming a leader and an inspiration. His story was one of many, but it was his, and it mattered. Eli's journey was a testament to the power of determination, the importance of believing in oneself, and the potential to rise from the ashes of adversity. As the camera pans out, Eli stands confidently in the kitchen, a smile on his face, ready to embrace the future he had fought for. Eli's story is a powerful reminder that we all have the capacity to inspire change and overcome obstacles. There are countless more stories like his, stories of resilience, courage, and the relentless pursuit of dreams. If you believe in the power of perseverance and want to hear more incredible stories, subscribe to our channel. Join us on this journey, and let's continue to celebrate those who refuse to be forgotten. We'll see you on the next mission.